Speaking of exceptional, please join me in welcoming Premier David Eby.
Thank you very much. That was a very kind welcome. I thought I was in politics. That was very smooth. It's really great to be with you here this morning on the territory of the Slaimo First Nation, the Coast Salish people. Thank you for getting up early. It's early. Last night I was at the Lieutenant Governor's house for the BC Public Service Long Service Awards. And there were 5 people there last night that worked for the public service for 50 years. And I am their 12th premier. So it put it all in perspective a little bit for me. The opportunity to be here with the people who have a strong vision for Vancouver Island, who are committed to prosperity and to, I understand the theme of the conference, to working together to deliver that here on Vancouver Island is a great one, and I'm really glad to join you this morning. What I would like to do today is keep my remarks shorter than usual. I mean, you'll be like, they're not that short, but I'm a lawyer and a politician, so I really like to talk. But keep them a little shorter than usual, and then really facilitate more Q&A time with you to hear about what your priorities are, what your concerns and interests are, because this is a very unique gathering of people. In terms of our government's approach to the economy generally, we believe very strongly that the strength of British Columbia is British Columbians. The people who make up our province are the economy, and if our people aren't strong, if they're not supported, then we're not going to be successful. This is a theory that's been borne out. We had the highest GDP growth of provinces, big provinces in Canada since the pandemic, and since 2017. We're very proud of that record. We have one of the lowest unemployment rates in Canada right now. We've returned multiple balanced budgets, and we've done it by investing in and supporting people. So everything from the big picture work around childcare and education, new spaces in schools, around training for in-demand placements, reducing costs of childcare for parents by 50%. You know, that program alone resulted in us leading the country and women returning to work post-pandemic. That childcare program is an economic program. To specific initiatives to build up communities like Nanaimo here. Our investments in cancer care, the new cancer care center that's coming to the hospital here. Local schools. Just down the road, Ecole Hammond Bay Elementary, and in Langford, a new post-secondary campus to support adults returning to school to do retraining and upgrade their skills. Those kinds of investments in the people here. In terms of BC ferries, when they told us that we'd be looking at almost 10% fare increases for the next 4 years, year over year, 10%, 10%, 10%, we provided financial support to BC ferries to keep the increase in fares at or below the rate of inflation. It's not all good news, though. You know, the province is we're swimming in a sea of national and international crisis right now. We spent in excess of $1 billion on forest fires this year. We had a massive drought. We're in the 4th year of drought here. The Cowichan River is on life support. The farmers that I visited in Boundary Country had the wine growers had their vines wiped out by a deep freeze, and other farmers, ranchers in the area hit hard by drought and lack of feed for cattle. Overall, globally, we see central banks, including Canada's, dramatically raising interest rates at a pace that hasn't been seen for generations, and a slowing global economy and major conflict between China and the United States, India and Canada, conflicts that affect our ability to trade, affect the flow of people, and how we operate in the world. So when we face these kinds of challenges as a province, as an open, trade-dependent economy in the Pacific, it's pretty clear to me that we all need to be working together in order to ensure security and stability for our people, and also to maximize the benefits of the place where we live. And there are different approaches. There are people who say in these times when the economy is slowing down, When there's uncertainty, that's the time for government to retrench and to reduce services, and that somehow the market is going to look after us in these kinds of circumstances. We disagree. We think the government needs to be involved in the big challenges of our time, that we need to be investing heavily in the growth that we're seeing in this province and in the opportunity that we have here. For example, did you know that 250,000 people moved to this province in the last 2 years? And in the first quarter of this year, we're already breaking any previous record for in-migration to British Columbia. People are coming from other provinces, they're coming from around the world, and they're coming for the opportunity that's here, which is very good news because we have about 1 million job openings expected over the next 10 years, and we need people to come, but we also need to respond to the pressures that that growth brings. So we've done things like investing in local communities to make sure that they have the infrastructure to support this population growth. We had a $1 billion, the largest ever, Growing Communities Fund, where we supported municipalities with growth pressures that they're seeing. So in Saanich, they use that money for a fire hall, a library, and a local park. In Nanaimo, a new artificial turf field. In North Cowichan, new affordable housing. Recognizing that local government officials are in a very good position to understand what the community needs, not just the pipes, although the pipes are important, but also what makes life exciting and interesting and fun and attractive in local communities as well. And in saying that, I want to recognize Mayor Croak here in the front row, the Mayor of the City of Nanaimo. Thanks for joining us this morning, Leonard. On that note, in terms of livable communities, it's critical that communities are safe. And there are different aspects to safety, just in terms of ensuring your people's physical safety, but also the impression that people get about, is their community safe, which is informed by a whole array of things, including public drug use, visible homelessness, challenges in downtown cores, which we know are here in British Columbia, but also down the west coast of North America and in other places in Canada as well. Our approach as government to these challenges has been one where we recognize the very real challenges faced by people with mental health and addiction issues. We've got $1 billion in the budget to increase the availability of drug and mental health treatment across the province, including hospital-like care at the Redfish Centre that we're expanding. We've expanded interventions that are non-police interventions for people struggling with mental health, where somebody with lived experience attends and supports a person, gets them connected with services, freeing up police to focus on actual crimes. Very successful pilot programs across the province. New CAR programs where police are paired up with mental health professionals to respond to people in crisis. But being compassionate, being concerned about people's well-being does not mean accepting unacceptable conduct. And when I visited Nanaimo this past summer, I spoke with business owners downtown. And they expressed to me real fear and anxiety that the downtown of Nanaimo had made so much progress. There had been a lot of effort to attract people and businesses back downtown, and that was under threat, due in part to open drug use and street disorder in Nanaimo, and it's not just in Nanaimo. And so we've introduced legislation at the provincial level to be clear. We don't believe, I don't believe, I worked briefly as a drug prosecutor, and I can tell you the criminal justice system is not the way to respond to people with serious addiction issues. I prosecuted, I remember, a young Indigenous woman for being in possession of drugs, being in an area where she shouldn't have been, and my salary was paid, the sheriff's salary was paid, her lawyer's salary was paid, the judge's salary was paid. We were all brought together. She was put on trial. It was traumatic for her, certainly. It was traumatic for me as the prosecutor. She was found guilty. Nothing happened. A huge amount of money was spent, and she left worse off than had that not happened at all. And although criminalization is not the answer to addiction, we do need to set standards. If we are funding consumption sites for people to use illicit drugs with a nurse in connection to services and those kinds of things, we don't want people using drugs in the doorways of businesses, in parks, at bus stops where people need to get on transit to get to work. Understanding and having compassion and concern about these things doesn't mean you have to give up your parks, doesn't mean you have to give up your bus stop, doesn't mean you have to give up your downtown. So that legislation is in front of the House, and we expect it to pass soon. In terms of the other challenges we face, housing, front of mind, it's a constraint on our economic growth. Companies that want to hire, that are ready to hire, you're looking for a CEO, for example, one of the questions that recruits are going to ask is, where am I going to live? It doesn't matter if it's the healthcare system, school, private business. The housing issue is front of mind for so many British Columbians. So it's a big priority for us. Our policies have opened 77,000 homes across the province. We've got more to do. In Nanaimo, 1,300 homes delivered or in the process, certainly funded from our end, being delivered. Vancouver Island, 8,500 units of housing open or underway. You will have seen our new rules on short-term rentals because of the depth of the housing crisis, needing to take steps to open up those units to make sure that people can rent them, to support local economies, to support our province, and also rules related to stratas, to require that empty units not sit empty, that instead they be rented out to people if they're available. We've got a lot more work to do, but with strong partners like Nanaimo, like Parksville, like Comox, like Cumberland, across the province, we will be successful. We're setting housing targets for municipalities. We're working with them to streamline approval processes on our own provincial side. We've reduced permit approval times by 33% for housing. We know we've got more to do on that front as well. But we are all hands on deck on the housing issue. I told you it would seem long, even though I said it was short. I'm almost there. The last piece I want to touch on is making sure that communities have the skills and the professionals that they need to be able to deliver what people are looking for. And one of the challenges that we've had, and I've met with a number of people in this situation, is with so many new arrivals coming to British Columbia, especially from out of country, they get recruited from their home countries to come to Canada. Could be the United States, could be anywhere around the world, and they get extra points for working in in-demand professions. Oh, you're an engineer. Oh, you're a nurse. Oh, you're a veterinarian. We're going to bump you up the list. And then when they get here, they're not able to work in those professions, and they try. And they try, and they try, multi-year processes, every year having to recertify their English, and then getting to the end of the process only to find out that they can't work unless they have Canadian work experience. And how do you get Canadian work experience if you're not allowed to work? It is a very cruel and unusual system, and it's everything from teachers to architects to engineers, veterinarians, I mentioned, social workers, you name it. So we introduced legislation around ensuring that every professional college, this is building on our work around healthcare, to make sure that every professional college has a clear path to accreditation, that it is understandable, that there is only one requirement to test for English, not 10, and other basic fairness elements to make sure that people can get to work in the professions where they're skilled. We can't leave people on the sidelines right now. We need them working to their full capacity in our province, and we're going to deliver that for people. So with that said, Vancouver Island is such a place of opportunity. I can't wait to hear your questions, your comments, your suggestions. We're going to have a very good conversation here today, and I'd like to invite up to the stage my interlocutors, and we'll get this party rolling. Thanks very much for waking up early.
First, let me say thank you for having us here. Thank you for including so many questions in this, because this is what I hear when I'm out reporting across Vancouver Island. Czech News is really feeling all of that is happening to all of your businesses as well. We're employee owners, proudly so. And so I feel I'm uniquely qualified to ask some of these questions, but gratefully, we also will have time for several of your questions at the end. So let me first begin by something close to my heart. And I'm jumping right to this, is the Horn Lake Connector, or a second highway route to Port Alberni. I'm hearing from business owners there that they're struggling. And I realize studies are one thing, and they are needed. How crucial and how quickly can we have a second route to Port Alberni?
Thanks for the question. I heard someone at the back maybe didn't catch the question. It was about the Horn Lake Connector and how quickly can we have a second route. It's obviously after what we went through this summer, what we saw and the impact on tourism and local business, there's a desperate need for a second connector. The need's been there for a while. My understanding is that some of the proposed routes are not going to be technically feasible from the perspective of the Ministry of Transportation due to slope, due to the Forest Service road not being the best route. But the good news is that Ministry of Transportation is working with local communities, with First Nations about a second route, making sure that we deliver that. There are two pieces to the disaster we saw this summer. One is support for the businesses that were affected. We're doing work to make sure that those businesses are supported. We want them to make it through to the next tourist season. We want to maintain that strength and not lose vital tourist serving and other businesses in affected communities. And we're advancing that work on the second route. So I understand the importance government does, as do local community members.
What's that timeline then?
So the work over the summer really focused on maintaining and ensuring access despite the road closure. And the Ministry of Transportation has started work almost in parallel to identify routes that are possible. So it depends on the route that's ultimately selected. There are major geotechnical challenges, some of which led to the closure of the road in the first place, as well as all of the environmental impacts of new roads. So it's not going to be tomorrow, but we are advancing that work.
But what is that timeline? Is that 1 year, 2 years? I mean, what I'm hearing from businesses, especially in Port Alberni, is that there's some critical, infrastructure, but with the port, that's a really helpful advance. But what I'm hearing is they need those trucks. And I drove that route. I'm not sure if you drove that route. I'm sure several people in this room did, the alternate route. And it wasn't designed for freight traffic. They want to see a commitment by your government that this is a top priority. And I appreciate what your words are, but what is that timeline?
Well, if I could announce a timeline today, I absolutely would.
Please do.
Yep. I can't. But just in terms of good faith on this, our government put significant resources into the existing road to make it safer, make it better for communities. We understand the importance of road access, and if anything, all of our minds were sharpened about the need for a second route after the disaster this summer. So it's the best I can do for you today, but just rest assured it is a priority for government.
Quickly. As we're speaking about transportation, BC Ferries is close to all of our hearts because we're on an island. And there have been continued cancellations and staffing issues. Talk to me about your feelings about how that's being handled. Is it being remedied soon enough to allow all of our businesses to grow?
Yeah, the ferries challenge is a really serious one, and all islanders will know that the ferry system has needed significant capital investment, new boats, for a long time. BC Ferries has a very aggressive now capital investment plan for the boats that we need, and they are being hit by a perfect storm. So the combination of the aging fleet, the shortage that all businesses are experiencing of being able to recruit and retain the staff that are needed to run the boats, federal requirements around staffing has led to a remarkable number and an unacceptable number of ferry cancellations. The direction of the Minister of Transportation, Rob Fleming, the direction of mine to the Ferries Corporation is that this is not acceptable, that we insist on minimum customer service levels to be met. There is a requirement for them to do that. I have confidence in the new leadership at BC Ferries to be able to turn this around and get back on track. It's also important to know the numbers I was telling you about in terms of growth. BC Ferries is seeing dramatically increased numbers of passengers. They're at 110, 120% of previous levels. And so there's more demand than ever on our ferry system. And so just like in our schools, just like in our housing, just like in our hospitals, in the ferry system, we're playing catch up after years of uninvestment and a lack of planning. But we are doing that work, and we will turn the corner at BC Ferries.
One of the biggest issues affecting a lot of businesses, especially in the downtowns, is the opioid crisis. It's touching everybody's lives. We have friends that are impacted. My son's school, that was a school that a little girl found a bag of fentanyl in the playground and brought it home and was playing with it. What I'm also seeing from businesses is just utter frustration from Campbell River down to Nanaimo is they're trying to be patient, they've made the right choices. Can you fix this? What has grown and blossomed isn't under your leadership, I understand, but there is something that many people feel is spiraling out of control as this opioid crisis impacts so many people's lives. Can you fix this?
Yeah, this is, when I think about the challenges that face British Columbians right now, these are huge issues. Global inflation, climate change, the housing shortage, the healthcare system, and the toxic drug crisis. These are incredibly large and complex issues, and so they all require attacks from multiple sides. So in terms of the opioid overdose crisis, we've lost almost 13,000 people since the public health crisis was declared in 2016 to overdose. And that number conceals the larger bit of the iceberg, which is the people who survive overdose with serious brain injury that either impairs their executive function and they're still wandering around in downtowns, or that requires them to be in the care of government for the rest of their lives. It is a devastating and massive crisis, particularly acute here in BC, but far from exclusive to British Columbia. We're taking this on at a number of different angles. From the perspective of ensuring that people have access to treatment, one of our biggest challenges is the skilled professionals to deliver those treatment programs, the social workers, the addictions doctors, the nurses who are expert in this area. So we have a health human resources strategy about training up those professionals to be able to open more programs. The Canadian Mental Health Association right now has a call out for nonprofit organizations to open additional treatment facilities. I was at one at our place, it's called New Roads, that we're funding for 3 years. It's a treatment center for men. This particular one, I met a guy named Tyson who used to be in jail 5 months ago, who's sober now in community and is rebuilding his life. These programs do have the ability to change lives and to get people back on track. And so we need more of those beds quite desperately across the province. That's why we're doing that work. And then there's a large group of people that are grappling with both serious mental health and addiction issues together. They require healthcare hospital almost like supports. We're opening 100 additional beds to match the Redfish Center that's already open and showing good success on this. That is a longer-term process in terms of opening a new healthcare facility, and all those pieces. In the meantime, addressing, as I said in my remarks, the street disorder, that the frontline retail businesses in downtowns shouldn't be the ones who pay the price for this larger crisis that's facing our whole society. Making sure that police have the tools they need to direct people into funded government spaces where they can connect with these supports, where they can get back on track, is critically important and is coming. So it's a really hard one. And if I had the easy answer, we would be deploying it right now. It requires multiple attacks on different fronts to go after it. Proud to say that we closed the deal on seizing the Hells Angels clubhouses, that we're supporting police in seizing property from drug dealers and very large drug busts across the province. The challenge with these drugs is how little it takes to kill people and how easily shipped it is through our mail systems and so on. So we're also working with the federal government on their and supporting their efforts, we hope, to really support the Americans as well in intercepting the fentanyl distribution internationally. Doing our part. I'm sorry this answer's so long to so many things, but pushing for better intelligence sharing from the federal government to the provincial government so that we can take action on what's happening in our province around organized criminal organizations and money laundering and the people who are actually profiting from this crisis, because They are here in our province, and the inability of the justice system to address that has been a very serious problem here and across Canada.
Well, speaking of the justice system and the prosecutions, as a former lawyer yourself and somebody who defended law, do we need stricter conditions here for these repeat offenders? We're seeing, just personally, I see them in the streets, and I know that many of them many of the users are being victimized by repeat offenders, people that are making money off of their tragedy. Do we need stricter and more enforceable options to get rid of these people that are preying?
Yeah, I think you're really hitting on a key issue, which is that there are a small number of people that can cause a huge amount of chaos in community. And our ability to intercept those folks and either get them on a better path or keep them in jail is absolutely essential. So there are a couple components to this. First is, in terms of identifying these individuals, we funded programs across the province, regional programs, around repeat offenders. There are 130 people across the province that are in this program right now. It's police, prosecutors, probation officials working together, because let's say there's a shoplifting issue at a store downtown. Police arrest the individual, they bring them in, the prosecutor gets the file, says shoplifting downtown, they're like, okay, I've got all these other files. Hard to imagine we're gonna put someone in jail for shoplifting, and then they put it to the side. They don't know that there is a long list that this is the most recent of a chain of 170 different shoplifting offenses, some of which involve violence, and that this is the same individual. So that this program helps collect all that information so that when this person's name is put into the system, the flag comes up, that they go to this specialized team that knows this person, that is able to make sure that the court has all of the information in front of them about this individual. And it's also matched up with interventionist psychiatric and addiction support as well. If the person's off their meds, to get them back on their meds, get them back on track, or to make sure that the court has all the information they need to keep them in jail. One of the big barriers that we've had is the feds changed the rules around bail hearings, the federal government. And we, along with Ontario, because they've seen this issue as well, and Alberta, because they've seen this issue as well, have been pushing the federal government. They passed it on the first day of the first sitting of this session, all parties in support, which I was glad to see. And now it's in the Senate. I have much more sympathy for the federal NDP position that the Senate should be abolished now, because it is still sitting at the Senate. We went to the Senate and lobbied individual senators to get these amendments passed so that the courts have the tools they need. And then finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the disproportionate number of Indigenous people that are both victims of violent crime and are involved in our justice system. We've invested in a number of different Indigenous justice centers across the province to attempt to intercept this in a different way for that community. These are centers that are run by Indigenous people, for Indigenous people, with wraparound services to break that cycle for people who may be involved in the criminal justice system. Is it a bad relationship? Is it an addiction issue, mental health issue? Is it something else that's going on? And we've had very good success through these programs across the province, including right here in Nanaimo.
Knowing all that you've just said and the research that's gone into all of these programs that you're listing, is it going to get worse before it gets better?
No, I really think we're turning the corner. These teams around repeat offenders have been very effective in intercepting a number of people that are causing some of this chaos. They're in their early days. They're in their first 6 months or so of operations, but they've already had a significant impact. Once the federal bail reforms come in, we'll have more success. We have provided a top-up to police funding to be able to ensure that all communities are able to, if the federal government's able to ensure the recruitment of new officers, the funding is there to be able to have policing levels that are appropriate for communities across the province. So I really do think we're turning a corner on this.
Okay. Let's move on to housing, something close to many people's hearts in their hiring, as well as thinking of our own children and where will they be living. When I think about the changes that you're making to the short-term rentals, aggressive changes, but it's also changing a lot of people's investment and retirement plans. Reading Les Lean's article in the Victoria Times Colonist today, it looks like it's actually a large number of corporations or companies that are the ones profiting off of this. It's not the small guy running a couple of suites out of his home. What do you want to say to those people whose lives have been pretty dramatically changed, and maybe they've built suites out of their rooms or out of their homes, invested that money, and now worried?
Yeah, I think a couple thoughts. I think for many people in the room, we've either used short-term rentals or we understand the appeal of it. Certainly for my family, we've stayed in short-term rentals. Have no interest in demonizing the sector. This is just a reality when you have a vacancy rate of less than 1%, when it's a drag on the provincial economy, the fact that people can't find housing. And we literally have strata buildings where 70 and 80% of the units in them are short-term rentals. And the net effect, whether it's a series of individuals with a single investment unit or one individual with 70 investment units, is the same, which is that we need those units for people who help make the province go. And so it is, I do recognize that it will be disruptive for a number of people that have these kinds of investment units that intended to use them for short-term rental. The good news is there are a huge number of people that are interested in long-term rental, that are very happy to be tenants, and you can maintain that investment. It won't be as lucrative, but it will help build the entire provincial economy. The second thing is we do need to redirect investment that people are making out of things that are a drag on our provincial economy, that exacerbate the housing crisis that we have, and into productive investments that lift up the whole provincial economy. And so finding ways that we can facilitate that and support that at the same time is really important. Investments in real estate, especially residential real estate, where you're not building new housing, where you're not delivering additional housing units, has been a very serious issue, not just here in British Columbia, but across Canada. The change of housing from a place to live into a passive investment stream, the real estate investment trusts and others. This is something that has really caused an entire generation of people in our province and across Canada to say, is there a future for me? How am I going to build my family? How am I going to build my future here? It is not a cost-free investment.
I'm going to break in really quickly because I'd like to include some of our audience questions, and very thoughtful ones. Will the province release Crown land in order to increase the housing supply? You've asked school districts and municipalities to release their banked land and contribute to housing costs and development costs.
Yeah, I think one of the really big opportunities around housing is something that governments used to do. So governments used to build housing for the middle class. The federal government had a tax shelter for building rental housing in the 70s and 80s. South Falls Creek, where I live in Vancouver, a bunch of co-ops and other, it was built by government. Even when you talk about soldiers returning from war, government built houses for the soldiers returning from war. Governments have built housing for a long time, and they stopped in the 90s at the federal level, in the early 2000s in British Columbia. And we're reaping the results of that. So getting back into the business of ensuring that we're delivering as a government attainable middle-income housing is a huge priority. So currently we're buying up land around future transit stations, including Rapid Bus and SkyTrain, for delivering transit-oriented housing. We're using provincially owned land. We will be using it to build attainable middle-income housing. We're partnering with First Nations around the same thing. And we're also, it's been very exciting. We've had a lot of municipalities come forward and say, we've got land, we'd love to work with you. We want to put housing above our fire station. We want to put housing above our city hall. We want to put housing above a local school, the school boards. We have health authorities who want to put housing for healthcare workers on hospital grounds. And the momentum behind this is very significant, and I do think ultimately it will be quite transformative as we get back into the business of making sure that the middle class actually has a place to live.
Have a quick sip of water while I ask you this question. Sure. Will you support the Red House, Blue House pilot project for providing housing with appropriate treatment options for the unhoused, submitted by Mayor Croak and Parksville Mayor O'Brien?
So we have number of different streams of funding, both for housing and for mental health and addiction. There's a call out from CMHA as well, that we're, Canadian Mental Health Association as well, that we're partnering with them on. I don't know this particular proposal, your worships, but absolutely.
But he'll look into it.
Yeah, you know, this is the way forward, is partnerships between levels of government, nonprofit organizations, in many cases business, to deliver what communities need, and I'm absolutely looking forward to hearing more about it. I don't know it. Thanks.
Well, I think that is our time. I'm seeing somebody hovering with, he has a busy schedule ahead, but I gratefully appreciate all the questions that you've asked. I hope that we were able to deliver some answers, and I certainly appreciate your time.